Thank you, Aditya. Uh, we're ending this 2 day conclave with a topic that resonates with the masses at large. Uh, while I was preparing, and as we speak today, Norway yesterday became the first country in the world where the number of electric vehicles have surpassed gas powered vehicles. Now, India achieves, uh, it intends to achieve a similar stride. And while researching for this panel, I was going through some recent statements made by the Union Minister of Road and Transport and Highways, Shri Nitin Gadkari. And if I may quote some, EVs to have cost parity with petrol and diesel cars in the next 2 years. EV manufacturers don't need any subsidy now. India will be in a position to export our lithium ion battery to different parts of the world. I want to eliminate, this was controversial, I want to eliminate diesel and petrol vehicles from this country within the next 10 years. India has a great potential to export electric two-wheelers, and EV sales are likely to reach 10 million annually by 2030 and create 50 million jobs. Now, these statements made in the last 2-3 months, reflect and touches upon the whole ecosystem of this EV, what we are talking about. So, in your opening comments, panelists, I want to understand, given these statements, how far have we come in India's electrification journey, the intent that is reflected from these statements, and the ground realities? Is there any gap? How far we have bridged that gap? If you would like to start.
Thank you, Arjun. And I'm Prashant. I lead sustainability at Amara. We are setting up a lithium-ion gigawatt-hour factory, and we manufacture chargers, battery management system. So just a brief intro about what we do. Now we are in Delhi and 14 other cities out of top 20 are the most polluted cities in the world. I'm just trying to establish a business case for, and I'll talk about carbon part later. So, and with the growing economy, people getting richer, the vehicle ownership is also going to go up. Many of our cities have already become unlivable, and things are not going to change unless we do something about it. Our biggest import continues to be crude oil. So I think the business case for electrification is very clearly established. The government has been very supportive. If I can just put together some of those policy announcements, starting with FAME 1, then FAME 2, around 10,000 CR. Then we had PLI for automobile sector, which is 25,000 crores. Then another PLI for advanced cell chemistries, 19,000 crores. There was a recent announcement on e-drive. And if you look at the GST for EV are lesser, against 15%, 3 or 4%. And state government has been rolling out red carpet for EV ecosystem and manufacturing. I mean, there has been multiple, I think the policy making has been very supportive so far. In total, 100,000 crores of overall in terms of subsidies or excise benefits have been kind of handed over to EV industry. What I see, the target is 30%. 30% by 2030 EVs. Today we are at 1.3%. It's still a very small number. So the potential for growth is much. The cost of batteries is coming down. It is going to become more affordable as we go forward. Today we have a very clear-cut business case for two-wheelers and three-wheelers moving to EV. You can look at total cost of ownership. Forget about the carbon numbers. So things are moving in the right direction, but what probably you asked about the challenges, where I could see certain things, as these PLIs and all those benefits which have been recently announced, the speed of execution and the efficiency of this fund deployment is one important thing. Second thing which I see as a major challenge is skill. We still don't have people who can run our EV factories. We are still a lot dependent on technology from China. And if you think about, if you talk about EV ecosystem, we are still talking about cell manufacturing. The real value lies in where you convert lithium into lithium carbonate, the mineral processing. And there is hardly anything happening in India. So those are some of the challenges which are going to come up. And as a country, I think we need to understand, unless we resolve those challenges, difficult to imagine we become a big net exporter.
Thank you, Prashant. I think you've given us some points, that which we will touch upon later in our discussion, specifically around the Fame 2 scheme. Talent is something which, is often neglected when these discussions around this ecosystem happens. And that is why I think the minister was bullish on when he mentioned that 50 million jobs will be created in this sector. But Mr. Sreekumar, if you would like to share your thoughts on the bridging between the intention and what we are seeing on the ground.
Let me start with some positive thoughts. I've been living in Delhi for a long time now, and we always had a problem of vehicle caused pollution in the air. It has only gone from bad to worse. The first major thing which I remember seeing was the change from kerosene and everything else filled auto rickshaws to CNG, and the buses and the commercial vehicles changing to CNG. At least in the first few weeks, I thought there is a perceptible change in the atmosphere, and I thought maybe Delhi has now become a place where we could think of living for longer time. But no, unfortunately, the pollution only went from bad to worse, and then this, the possibility of electric vehicles came in. That gives us hope. We are not there yet. For my personal opinion, Delhi needs electric vehicles more than anything else, irrespective of whether the electricity comes out of grid power, which is 70 odd percent driven by fossil fuel, irrespective of the economics of it. If we have to live and breathe here, we need vehicles which don't pollute. It is very difficult to convince Delhiites to use public transport. I have not been a big user, so I don't think I can preach about using public transport in spite of so many metros coming in. I think Delhi roads are only becoming more occupied with vehicles, personal vehicles. And for that reason, the only hope I have for Delhi is that we become electric. And that, in my opinion, is also more personal to people. It is not that we are saving the planet. It is only that we are helping our children be able to breathe. So in that hope, I think the possibility of electric mobility coming in Delhi, for example, is completely different for completely different reasons than any other place. Today we have the technology, we have the infrastructure we can live with. Of course, a lot of work needs to be done on creating a charging ecosystem which is easily accessible, easily available. My own feeling is that the vehicles themselves have to be more cheaper. Currently, the difference between buying a ICE engine car and one with electric, for some reasons, is too high. I'm not into the economics of making a car, so I can't tell. Maybe Mr. Verma or somebody else who is from that industry could tell. But my guess is it will also happen as more manufacturers come in. So,
Right.
To answer your question, I am hopeful that this change is already on the move and will only accelerate as time
Right.
goes.
Thank you, Mr. Sreekumar, and love that focus on Delhi and its public transportation. And we've seen some strides. Alokji, you can tell because your company, is doing such on that front in that sector. What are your thoughts?
So I guess if I were to, I think, look at Gadkare's statement, I think it's more of a vision or a provocative statement, right? Which actually propels us to think beyond the obvious, right? It's not going to be a linear curve. For example, the adoption is not going to happen at the same pace as it has happened till now. It will actually go exponential, which we are seeing and which we will continue to see. So that's more as a provocative piece to make sure that each one of us in the ecosystem is
The industry gets that nudge.
getting that vision.
Yeah.
Right. I think that is very critical because otherwise people will not get nudged. People will not really move at all because if you look at the past, it will not inspire you to move to the future. Right. So I think somebody has to be out there saying, okay, this is what it is going to be. Having said that, I guess we do feel there is going to be, at least on the commercial side, there will be horses for courses. And when I say that, you will actually see last mile connectivity to move towards EV much faster, right? light commercial vehicle. On the pass car, definitely, I think a much faster move is happening. But on the heavy transport, I think that will be that slower because it will have different anxieties.
Okay.
Even Europe is actually struggling on that front. So that I think is going to be slightly kind of so. Let's say if I were to take the forecast, the Bloomberg forecast says the LCVs will be around 25% of new vehicle sales by 2030, right? Pass cars will be, I think, a similar number, 30%. MHCV, the trucking part is going to be 5%, and that's for the reason, right? But having said that, I think in a lot of these cases, you have new solutions coming in, and we heard a few new solutions in the previous discussion as well. For example, if swapping comes as an industrial kind of a way of hastening the movement of the transition, it can actually move this 5% to, let's say, 10%, 12%, 15%, because a lot of more use cases will become. It's my daily job right now to see in terms of which are the use cases which are becoming much more viable. So there are use cases which are viable right now also. IRRs might be lower, but again, you put other levers around. Maybe you put the battery cost year 2, year 3, the way it will come down. I think it is moving in that direction.
Right.
So definitely hopeful on the overall trend.
Right.
But I think, as I said, I think there'll be, and we are working on multiple alternate fuels. So I think that, to my mind, I think those will all play a role. Hydrogen will play a role. Electric will play a role. Maybe diesel will play a role. Even in Niti Aayog's calculation, I think they're talking about 2070 also. There is a number in terms of the overall park being diesel as well. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Alok ji. Madhur, your quick thoughts, and then we'll get into some of the specific points which have come out from these opening remarks.
I think a lot has been said. I would just add 2-3 aspects to or dimensions to this problem. I think one, the EV adoption, as Alok ji very rightly said, it's a lot of segmentation and horses for courses. Even if I talk about the segment he plays in, which is the commercial vehicles, light, heavy, there are multiple applications, right? There are trucks which are doing market load. They're running, 400 kilometers in a day, right? And they need to keep running. Like that's the KPI. That's what the fleet operator wants. And there are trucks that are used, for a cement mixer on a construction site. That truck is not moving. That truck just needs to stay resilient in a reasonably hostile environment and stick around, and EV, no EV, and beyond a point, it won't matter. So I think the whole rhetoric, the Honorable Minister's statement, I think I pay respect to it because it paints the direction clearly. It aligns vectors. It builds confidence for the ecosystem, investors, global investors, charging infrastructure, PPP partners, right? So I full respect to that clarity that this has attention at the highest level, but the ground realities will see a certain evolution, and economics will need to drive that. The second point I would just say is that there are other enablers to this. I think there's a good point made around lithium, for example, right? Now that's about technology and capacities. But similarly, look, I think EVs have come past that hype cycle where a lot of the early adopters were buying EVs because it was cool to buy an EV, right? Or I'm a tech entrepreneur, I want to buy an EV because, I am ahead, I adopt stuff sooner. The Tesla bookers of 7 years back are still waiting for their 50,000 rupees deposit to come back, right? So there was a certain hype cycle. Now that hype cycle is gone, thankfully, right? Now the buyers are actually doing the TCO. A two-wheeler Nariyal Pani wala who delivers Nariyal Pani the day actually knows that this EV works, right? This is what I want. I drive 70 kilometers. This is what I want, right? This is cheaper. Overall, it saves me money. It is resilient. It's maintenance. There is no jig, right? And several other advantages which are very clearly understood now.
Right.
The ecosystem needs to come up though, right? The charging infrastructure ecosystem, maintenance and repairs. We still, or maybe now we know a little bit about the wear and tear profiles and maintenance profiles of these vehicles. But there was a lot of, initially, we started with the hype saying zero maintenance, and we realized, no, actually a lot of mechanical wear and tear, right? And so, that sort of ecosystem has to build up, AMCs have to come up, and the charging infrastructure, battery swapping infrastructure, etc., have to come up. So those are the two broad points I would add to whatever has been said.
Right. Thank you, Madhur. Next question, more specifically to Alokji and Mr. Sreekumar. We're seeing a global trend where, hybrids are being, preferred more than EVs. If you look at the plans recently of the Asian giants, be it Suzuki, Toyota, Hyundai, they're aligning their plans, towards hybrids. Volkswagen just announced a few days back that how they are stepping up their investments on hybrids. Volvo, on the other hand, backtracked its plan of going full electric by 2030. And Bernstein report this year showed that hybrid sales, plug-in hybrids around the world have gone up 50% compared to 8%, the battery electric vehicles. And as you mentioned, FAME, since the since the rollback of the incentives in February, we are seeing a month-on-month decline in EV sales in India. So, how is this hybrid scene being evolved, Alok, in India? What parallels do you draw from these global trends, and how do you see it playing up in India?
So I think I guess you'll have to look at two hybrids, right? Not many of them are in India. So having said that, I think the Japanese technology is much more geared towards hybrid technology, which is the plug-in hybrid, and I think that's where they've been pushing into the government. From a government standpoint, at this stage, it probably doesn't make sense to have an intermediate transition stage. If we were evolved as other countries, I think it was a good transition play. But as of now, I think a hybrid typically is much more expensive because you are actually having two different systems in play. You have the electric system, you have the normal ICE engine. Yes, you take care of the range anxiety, but that range anxiety is actually, the players are taking away the range anxiety already. So I think, and the network will kick in. From a government standpoint, again, to get the basic advantage of electric, I think you talked about the fact that there's a huge forex outflow from India's standpoint on the oil front. So it doesn't solve there. I think so. So to have seen, the government has actually not really pushed the case from. At the same time, it will give efficiencies to a regular ICE engine. So I think, as I said, horses for courses. You should not really take away that option from the consumer standpoint, but you will see, I think, electric coming front and center than the hybrid.
Right. Mr. Sreekumar, your thoughts on the evolving hybrid scene in India and the consumer sentiment that you're reading around them?
I mean, look, if you ask me, whatever hybrid available in Indian market, I would rather call them more efficient ICE engines. Yeah, they don't run on anything other than petrol or diesel. Plug-in hybrids, if and when they're available, it could cater to some people's psyche, and if they are largely they are largely using electric power to power the vehicle, and the ICE part is only in emergency, then it is still a good thing because it would help people to go for electric. Like Mr. Verma said, I don't think there is a need for this. We have already come to that technology stage where battery electric vehicles are, you don't have to think about, let's say, not being able to running out of charge or anything. If you're living in Delhi, I don't think we are driving 400 kilometers a day. Maybe then you have to drive 24 hours to do it through the Delhi traffic. So we already have enough battery operated, let's say, vehicles with capacity, which is reasonable enough to survive most cases. But for that reason, it is good enough. And if there are some people who would want to have something as a backup, plug-in hybrid would be an option. Beyond that, at least I would personally not call hybrid as anything other than a marketing.
Okay.
It is good that it is more efficient. Definitely, it uses less petrol. Why not? But then, I mean, there is
it's
no
not
point
in the pure
it,
play of, but when we
correct,
are talking about electrifying India's
it doesn't add much to electrification. It reduces consumption of petrol. That's it.
Right. Madhurji, your quick thoughts. I mean, clearly there's a consensus evolving that range anxiety is a thing of a past.
Yes.
Your thoughts on that?
See, one, range anxiety is a thing of the past, increasingly so. For longer trips, etc. The current range and this sort of anxiety about what if I run out, what I am stuck in a traffic. It's always that event risk, right? You're driving, from Mumbai to Pune, and the Lonavala stretch takes 4 hours, and the car is on, and then it's not really range anxiety. It's about is there a backup? So there is that element which needs to be taken care of, which partially gets solved with infrastructure, swapping, whatever other kinds of infrastructure. The The other part also, I think there's so much talk about range anxiety. When I used to do this work 10 years back, yeah, this was very real. But today, remember, every 10 kilometers of range you add actually adds a lot of cost on the battery,
Okay.
right? A lot of cost and a lot of weight to the vehicle.
Right.
So, I don't think we are blindly and mindlessly going towards increasing range. That's not a smart thing to do. There's an optima. Toyota Prius 15 years back was giving us 1300 kilometers of range, right? A more effective ICE engine was giving us that kind of range, right? Was that needed? Actually, not so much. Yeah, it reduced your trips to the fuel station when it was not needed. So I think we get to maybe a little bit more stretch on the range, and rest the technology sort of takes care of the cell technology, the efficiency on the battery, lesser, reduction in performance attributes, right? The batteries also lose performance over the years. I think some of these things will take care of, from where we are today. But yeah, broadly speaking, anxiety is not as much of a problem. It has other considerations.
Alok,
Just a little bit. I think we are not saying that we are living in the perfect world.
Yeah.
Right? So that don't take it that all the problems of the electric have been solved. But I think the point is, it's better to solve those problems than to go for a hybrid solution. So I think that's where I think the focus should be.
Sure. Prashant, coming out from the discussion, all of it boils down to the battery thing.
I just want to address this
Yeah.
hybrid thing also. It's very interesting conversation, and I was going through a Niti Aayog, paper, how this 2040 in India will look like, and there is space for all the technologies. In fact, the target of electrification is 30% EVs by 2030. So remaining 70% is something else. There is a focus around biofuels. E20 is already in. By 2025, E20 will become mandatory. So there will be multiple solutions. There is no one solution which will solve all our problems. Now, there is one technical thing which sometimes don't get discussed so much. In a hybrid vehicle, there is a smaller battery. Now, the battery has a number of discharge cycles. So a 40 kilowatt hour of, a EV battery can get charged, let's say 5,000 times. Technical range is 15 lakh kilometers. That hybrid vehicle with the same number of cycles will get charged and discharged multiple times during same day. So your range or your life of the battery comes down drastically in case of hybrids. And I don't think any of those hybrids which are being sold has any component of warranty on battery part. Although EV does offer you 8-9 years, and it can go much beyond that. If you just look at the number of discharge cycles, it can handle. So those things, I think there is enough space for a lot of technologies. There is no one thing. Definitely with the prices of batteries coming down. If right now we are at $120 per kilowatt hour, if it comes to 80-90, I think the game for hybrid will become very difficult to justify.
Okay. And how would you see this model of battery as a service? It's quite contextual given just 7-10 days back, JSW MG came out with this plan with their Windsor car. How do you see that shaping this whole ecosystem?
Very interesting what happened few days back. It's like a cat among the pigeons. Nobody gave it a thought, but now you have a vehicle which sells for 10 lakhs. Very feature, lot of features, and you pay 3 rupees 50 paisa as a, what is that? 3.5 rupees as a rent per kilometer. So it becomes the total cost of ownership suddenly for EV has become lesser than ICE. The capex as well as opex. And these are very interesting times. You will see a lot of movement in EV in next few months. Battery as a service is a great concept. It brings down the initial purchase cost, and it also in a way communicates the confidence an organization has on their batteries. So it's not only this. They also said that 3 years you can get a full buyback of 60%, and the battery has unlimited kilometer, unlimited year warranty. I was trying to read through the lines. If there is something which I am missing, there is nothing. So interesting times. Swappable batteries, Alok spoke about it. That's another thing. Today if you go to a place like Lucknow, there are e-rickshaws which are running on lead acid battery. What they do is they come back in the evening, they just swap the battery. The other battery is getting charged, they swap the battery. So it's already happening where the economy makes sense. For cars or the auto manufacturers, the challenge would be standardization.
Right.
Now BYD battery is different from MG battery is different from Tata Nexon. So can you just replace it with something else immediately in 10 minutes time? Maybe technology would evolve.
Alok ji, I saw you picking up the mic.
Yeah. So this is something that we kind of deal with in terms of trying to see which use cases and which is the model that works. See, typically in a BEV, finally it has to be on the commercial side, has to be funded by the financiers. So what are the questions that they ask? What is the battery life? Right. So right now I think the jury's out what is going to be the battery life, basis which they will say, okay, this is my terms. Right. They will also ask what is the salvage value of the vehicle. Right. Again a question mark in terms of we are too early in the cycle to make that happen. And then again in terms of so overall I think the tenure of the loan and all those things become. If you look at swappable or battery as a service, suddenly those things go out of the window. You don't have to have a credit risk. You don't have to have a tenure issue. You can actually give a 10-year loan and stuff like that. So it becomes much more affordable from that standpoint. And as rightly put, Prashant, in terms of it brings up down the capex because you're taking out the battery in commercial vehicles. The battery cost is roughly around 50% of the overall cost. So you take away that, it becomes comparable to the diesel. And then you, on the OPEX side, again, it's a much better deal, 25% definitely for sure. So again, net, it becomes much more from an adoption standpoint. We'll have to see. Right. There are cases, let's say the control cases where I think on the port side, you really need to have a much better availability of the vehicle. So the initial cases will be like that. But I think this is a promising one. Having said that, I think there are going to be things that will need to be ironed out, but definitely promising.
Mr. Sreekumar, your thoughts on it, on this model and something that which we were discussing in terms of fast charging becoming the next big thing compared to range anxiety. What are your thoughts on all this?
My thoughts are that multiple models, business models would emerge and that will support the whole transition from ICE engines to electric. Which one will those be? Hard for me to predict. But I mean, as people gain confidence, like Prashant said, that the battery can actually last longer, then there will be companies who are willing to put money on the table. Okay, your risk, which there is no risk. If you have a perception of risk, you pay me for that, I will give you. Take the risk away. So these kind of multiple models will come. Fast charging is more a technical topic on, let's say, improving the reducing the time to charge. Which is already, let's say, the ratings of chargers are already going higher. And with higher rated DC chargers, the charging time becomes less and less. Even now people are talking about megawatt chargers. Forget about kilowatts. So, I mean, as Siemens, we also do this locally in India with fast chargers up to 240 kilowatt already localized. So there's already a possibility to do fast charging using technology available, and it's only going to improve, and that will help penetration of this in the country. So that's how I see. Okay, all kinds of models will work.
Thank you, Mr. Sreekumar. Very quickly, Madhur, your thoughts. I have 2 minutes on the screen, and then I'll take a concluding round of comments from each one of you.
Yeah, no, I think I've already spoken about. I think the only thing I would say is that from an infrastructure and technology point of view, see, a lot of the batteries are, so to speak, hard-coded in the devices, a lot like our mobile phones, right? And there's a lot of good reason and logic to do that because you make the battery more efficient, you prevent energy loss and whatnot. But also, in use cases and applications where the running needs to happen, a vehicle needs to be on the road, swapping is probably the most efficient. It will not waste time. I think fast charging technology and infrastructure. And one thing maybe that's not spoken is this layer that needs to be applied where a fast charger can actually work on any battery, like almost think of it as an intermediary protocol, right? Which could charge the vehicle. Probably it will truly sort of lead to adoption. Otherwise, charging technology might happen, but the charging infrastructure providers who have already laid out the infrastructure are not going to go and change the infrastructure till the capex has paid for itself. It's like telecom, right? The 6G adoption can happen today. 5G could have happened many years back, but it did not until the 3G, 4G infrastructure or telecom towers paid for themselves, right? So that capex and the infrastructure is a pretty important element to this.
Okay, so a lot of focus today on the battery technologies, and rightly so because we're discussing EVs. But in your concluding comments, I mean, Prashant, you of course represent a battery company, but if I have to ask you that beyond battery technology, what is that one technology that you see going forward reshaping this electrification journey?
Our topic today is sustainable mobility. I think we should have spoken about electrification of public transport.
Right.
And I think we need to pat ourselves on the back. India has one of the highest electrification when it comes to electrification. Buses are also picking up. The third, the last mile connectivity. There are a lot of e-rickshaws now, so things are kind of moving forward at a very rapid pace. Sometimes we don't see that trend because we are not buying EV yet. There are constraints. Another thing I think which we should talk about is sorry, I'll come to that point,
Yeah.
but the grid part. I mean, if we have so many EVs getting charged at the same time, can my grid handle it? What about the load balancing?
And whether
So-
that energy is renewable or not.
And that's another part of it. So there is a lot of work which needs to happen, making sure that the charger has a BESS, which is battery enabled storage
Storage.
service, and it is also able to sometimes charge the grid. So all those vehicle as charging, I mean, giving back to the grid. So there are a lot of things which are evolving here. Now coming to the future technologies, yes, there is a lot of talk about hydrogen. I do not know. I mean, the progress is there, but it would take some time. But like I said, 10 years down the line, there would be multiple things available to you as a consumer.
Okay. Mr. Sreekumar, what are you picking up when we're looking at the future trend?
I mean, so I would, sorry to disappoint you, I would like to focus on what's present,
Yeah.
that we can solve. So in my opinion, there is enough work to be done on penetrating, let's say, converting fossil fuel to electric, and the current technology with the technology for vehicles, the technology for charging, have enough space to let's say cater to. Of course, there would be other alternatives, whether it is biofuels or hydrogen, whatnot. I mean, I think last week I also read Toyota is looking at water as a fuel. So there would be topics, but
Right.
I mean, we could still continue to focus on let's say, possible track of electric mobility in place of fossil fuel mobility. And that's at least how I would like to think personally.
Okay. Alok ji?
Yeah, I think focus more on sustainable mobility rather than just electric.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what the question
Mm.
is. So alternate fuels, I think we are working across multiple powertrains. We're working on hydrogen fuel, H2Is, H2FCEV. We're working on the bio CNG, which is again it's a CNG engine, so that's there. Then on LNG, we are having our portfolio. So we're working across different, and we have products out in the market as well. So we are our H2 FCEV, hydrogen FCEV buses are with NTPC. So I think working in the much of the very strictest of geographies, very at heights like Ladakh and Leh. So we have one of the highest fleet in terms of H2Is running with Reliance. So again, these are different technologies which again are on their own journey, right?
Right.
It's not as though they're also kind of. So when I look at the TCO for them, it's also as though it's not as though they are really ready to go. But I think with the green hydrogen mission, and I think some interesting kind of play in terms of hydrogen production that are coming up. I don't know whether we have a line of sight to $1 per kg, but definitely I think with the blue hydrogen, I think I'm told one can reach 1.7, 1.8, 2. So I think journey is on, and I think there are initially we were disappointed by on the hydrogen side, people focusing more on the refining or the petrochemical sector because
Right.
that's the big use case for them. But we found people who are also looking at automotive as a sector, transportation as a sector, because in hydrogen, what really happens is the scale economics don't increase beyond a point. So you can actually have distributed production centers along with your infrastructure. So I think those are things that we are seeing now. So hopeful there.
Okay, Alok ji. Madhur, very quickly, what are you seeing, gauging when it comes to flex fuels, hydrogen?
No, I think the fuels, the alternate fuels, biofuels, water, whatever other
Yeah.
fuels are. I think those technologies will come. Those waves of technologies will come. You can't stop them, and and for good reason. I think the bigger issue to me, the whole part of sustainable mobility when we work at Praxis, it's not just about the vehicle, but also what happens to the public infrastructure. Look, EV is still a car and it is still jamming the road. Do we have the infrastructure to ply those cars? We can keep making them cheaper, better, more efficient, less costly, which means more and more and more cars on the road. It's very akin to what happened to tourism in Europe, where Airbnbs came, tourism grew, everybody is happy, more revenue, but now they want to talk about over tourism. They want to restrict tourists, right? So I just want to take a slightly, maybe leave it on a little bit more somber note. While EVs and technology and new technologies will evolve, they're evolving. A lot of R&D dollars, etc., going in. But the government they will at some stage surely have to look at the more holistic effects of this, and the enabling infrastructure, public infrastructure, smart infrastructure, smart cities, all of that will need to soon kick in as a big constraint to how mobility or urban mobility in particular will evolve with time.
Thank you, Madhur, and thank you everybody, for sharing your thoughts this afternoon. I think we have time for 2 questions from the audience. Anybody from the audience, if they want to pose some questions to the panelists on this topic? Yeah.
I have a question on the urban, rather charging infrastructure, especially in Delhi, as we see. You think how long it will take to really facilitate the infrastructure which is just suitable for the number of cars we are ambitioning for? Because today, if you drive from one corner to other corner, the kind of time what it takes, kind of infrastructure weakness of that system itself, how it will take and what long it will take. Are we in the lagging part of this fund? Any idea on that?
Okay, Prashant.
Maybe I can just share some statistics. And the second
Yeah.
part is difficult to answer whether we are progressing well enough. So India has around 6,000 public chargers. Now that's a statistics. Many of them are not fast chargers and many of them are not reliable. You go there and you realize that charger is not working. It's down.
Is 80% not working, 20% working?
So you are saying 80%, but yeah, there is a big number, right? So compare it with China, they have 2.5 million. And as per what we are looking at this transition, we would need 5 lakh chargers. So from 6,000, we need to 5 lakhs in next 2 to 3 years. Now these are statistics. There are a lot of companies like we are making off-board, on-board chargers now. There are good orders coming from OEMs as well as Tatas are getting big into, electrification on highways. So things are progressing. If you ask me, can they move faster? Definitely yes.
Any other question? Can we pass the mic?
Thank you, Arjun. So I had 2 questions, one of which related to MG newer vehicle you have already asked. Second one is from Prashant. So Prashant, I am a retail investor in Amara, and I have great confidence in your company. My question is, you talked about, while talking about hybrid vehicle, you talked about that the battery life, because they are constantly charging, it's reduced. So in newer EVs, we are seeing something which is known as regenerative braking. So doesn't it impact the battery life or battery lifespan?
Not so much. I'm talking about BEVs, which is pure electric, because the overall capacity would be 40 kilowatt hour and regenerative braking will be a small fraction of it. But when we are talking about hybrid vehicle, if the size of the battery is maybe 4 kilowatt hour, 5 kilowatt hour, depending on which hybrid it is undergoing many more discharge cycles. So if the battery is, let's say, designed for 5,000 discharge cycles, in case of hybrid, it would attain that 5,000 discharge cycles much earlier. It does have an impact, but not so much. So 5,000 is also a number which is in optimal condition. But even 3,000, 4,000 discharge cycles with, let's say, a range of 300 kilometers would give you the number of kilometers which you would have never seen in any ICE vehicle.
Okay. So you're talking about discharge cycle. What does it actually means? So means the battery will completely discharge and then it will completely recharge? What do you mean by this?
That's what one cycle means, from 0 to 100 and 100 to 0. That's called as one cycle.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the time, audience, we have for this panel. Can we please have a big round of applause for all our panelists?